Hey guys, today's story is about a Mutants and Masterminds game with a guy that was obsessed with Nightwing. This is a throwaway account, just in case the guy in question finds this. This is a story I never thought I would post on here. It honestly isn't that bad, but I suffered, and still suffer, from pretty bad anxiety. And for a long time, even thinking about this, and my own poor behavior in this, made me feel physically ill. This isn't a call for sympathy or justification. I know I was a jerk in this. I'm just providing some context. So I joined a Mutants and Mastermind game with a new GM, and most of the players were pretty flaky to be honest. There were only 3 regulars, including myself. One of them we'll call Rick, and the other one wasn't really involved in the story. But even before everything went down, Rick was a little odd. He was obsessed with Nightwing. His character was literally Nightwing, but this isn't the horror story. I actually like Nightwing, and I think playing your favorite superhero in a Mutants and Masterminds game is part of the fun. However, this guy would do things like post those YouTube fan videos that are just pictures of Nightwing set to music into the Discord group chat. I had found this a little bit odd. This guy knew I liked Nightwing, so maybe he was trying to engage in our mutual interest. He also mentioned later on that he had gotten rejected from another game as he gave a wrong answer, and so was applying under a different name. This was a little bit of a red flag, but hey, this was a few sessions in and everything else had been fine. I also assumed that he was quite young, 16 or so, and I know I was kind of a brat at that age, especially because I didn't know a lot of people with mutual interests. And the only other red flag up to that point had been, during one session, he had done pretty much everything, mostly due to bad rolls and decisions on my part, but by pretty much everything, I mean that he was the one who found all of the information, fought the big bad of the session, and even saved my character's brother. I just kept rolling badly, which led to my character almost getting down in the first round of combat. He complained about this, and I, assuming that he was referring to earlier in the session when my character had hung back so she could infiltrate later if need be, apologized, explaining that I wanted to have a backup plan in place as this information was important. He seemed a little pissy afterwards still, but hey, I have no control over the dice. Things really started to kick off, however, when he said that it was about time that we made the game set in the DC Comics universe. I disagreed, mostly on the grounds that I hadn't signed up for a DC Comics game, and it felt disrespectful to the GM, although I didn't say that. And since the GM wasn't responding, I argue that it didn't make sense to suddenly switch. Not that Rick listened before eventually giving up. I expected the GM to address this before the next session, but he never did. Rick also never really engaged with the NPCs in character. In the game, there was a group of superpowered children that we were protecting, and my character had become like a big sister to them. And the RP with them was honestly the best part of the game. But every time we tried to include Rick in this, for example my character asking him about his backstory, he would just say he was too busy. The only NPC he did engage with was his backstory Batman, who was originally named Brian, but he changed that to Bruce halfway through the campaign. Now, with all of this in mind, I drafted a message to the GM laying out my frustrations. Mostly with the I want to switch to the DC Comic Universe thing, and the fact that he simultaneously didn't engage with my character or the world, while also complaining that he had to do everything, and all my character did was stand around. I ran this message, and the situation by several other GMs I knew, mostly because I knew that Rick's earlier behavior had frustrated me, and I was biased against him, so I wanted to make sure I wasn't the problem. I honestly should have messaged Rick privately with my concerns, but I messaged the GM instead. He responded by forwarding that message to Rick, and so Rick and I talked a little bit in private message, and it seemed like the situation was resolved. So, with that in mind, I put Discord on Do Not Disturb to work on an essay. 2 hours later, I had opened Discord to see that Rick had sent me another private message calling me a bitch and a gossip. He also posted in the main chat to say that he was leaving because he didn't want to play with a person that talked about him behind his back. And everyone else was confused as hell. The other player, who I assume Rick messaged, left shortly thereafter as well. I should have just talked to Rick directly about my problems, and it was all such petty bullcrap that he probably would have stopped if I just talked to him. Given that he was not, as I had thought, 16 at the time. He was 27. Well guys, I don't think the OP did anything really wrong here. The guy asked other people if the message he had composed was okay or too much. He also was trying to talk to the GM, who was, well, the GM. From my experience at the very least, it's pretty standard practice to at least talk to the GM before you really go out and talk to the other people to see if you are being a problem. But instead of the GM saying like, hey, no, you are being unreasonable, or no, okay, this other guy is being a bit of a problem, he did probably one of the worst things that he could have done, and forwarded the full message to the person that he was talking about. Both the GM and the player in question here are both at fault. But, in any case, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you would like to chat and hang out with other people, I have a Discord link in the description. But as always guys, have a good one.